For editorial discussion is with respect to India has a carbon problem. So this editorial, it was this opinion, this was dated in Hindu, June 3rd, 2023. So that is that is the date of this article. So what this article deals with is that it deals with the problem of CBAM. CBAM was recently introduced by EU, right? European Union, right? Carbon border adjustment mechanism. So that is what this article deals with. It tells us about how India, is it WTO applicable, does it comply with WTO or not, that and all it talks. So we'll see about what is CBAM and what is the significance of CBAM and what are the concerns, what is India doing and how it will impact India, and all these dimensions we'll discuss this topic. So yes, recently EU, European Union has introduced this thing called CBAM, that is Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism. So according to this, there are a lot of apprehensions with respect to the improvements in CBAM, with respect to the improvements in CBAM amongst developing countries and also India. India is also one of the developing countries, and this has spooked such developing countries with respect to their trade and exports and all. And India has also said that it will take matters to WTO with respect to CBAM, and India feels that this is some kind of protectionism. It is against the principle of globalization and against the WTO principles, and India has accused, it has not outrightly accused, but it feels that this CBAM, carbon border adjustment mechanism, is some sort of protectionism that the EU has indulged into. So yes, now we'll see what CBAM is. We already know its abbreviation. It is Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism. So in 2005, EU is bringing a new thing called the emission trading system. It has already been debated a lot of times amongst global forums, but in 2005, European Union is bringing a new mechanism or system called as the emission trading system, with a view to reduce greenhouse gases emissions, and in a similar fashion. So that was a market based mechanism to buy and sell such units and all, with the ultimate aim to reduce greenhouse gases. But this, in a similar manner, CBAM has also been introduced by European Union. So what is CBAM? CBAM works on the principle of carbon tax, carbon pricing or carbon taxation. So yes, it tries to level the playing field amongst domestic producers in EU and importers. So basically what the thing is, in EU there are a lot of climate stringent policies for producers. In other countries, like importing countries, the countries that import, countries that export to EU, such countries do not have stringent mechanisms or have less stringent mechanisms with respect to those mechanisms in European Union. So in order to level the playing field, European Union has brought in this mechanism called the CBAM. So that is what CBAM is. For instance, we will take a very simple example. Let us take two pen manufacturers, both are the same pen, made of the same material and same color. We will take one manufacturer is from European Union countries, either any one of the European Union countries, and we will take the other pen manufacturer from India, for example. So yes, now we know that in this example, the product that is manufactured is the same pen, same color, with the same raw materials, but only because EU has climate stringent policies, the cost of production of the pen in EU we'll assume it is 15 rupees. In a similar fashion, the pen that is manufactured in India, its cost of production will be around rupees 10. Why the gap of 5 rupees? It is due to the stringent climate policies that is prevalent in the EU. So like any rationally thinking man or woman, or any individual for that matter, will go and opt for the pen that was manufactured in India, irrespective of the market. They'll go and opt for the pen. It's the same pen, same color, and it is made of the same material and same brand. So one is available for, let us say it is the final cost selling price is around 12 with respect to the Indian pen, and rupees 17 with respect to the pen that was manufactured in the European Union. So any rationally thinking man will go with the pen that cost 12 rupees, because it is the same pen and it is rupees 5 lesser than that of the European manufactured pen. So in order to make this in order to make this thing a level playing field, in order to make the market a level playing field, what Europe has done is that it is imposing such CBAM, such carbon taxing mechanisms for imports from countries that have less stringent or no stringent carbon pricing mechanisms or policies. So that is what generally CBAM is, with a very simple example. And yes, CBAM is a part of CBAM is a part of European Union's one grander scheme known as the Fit for 55 scheme. Fit for 55 scheme. What this scheme entails is that the Fit for 55 scheme, it tries to reduce 55% of global emissions from 1990 levels by 2023. So CBAM is also part of this Fit for 55 initiative. So generally this is what CBAM is. Hope you all have an idea, like basic idea what CBAM is all about, and it is also a part of this Fit for 55 principle that aspires to reduce 55% of emissions from 1990 levels by 2030 in the European Union. So yes, that is what Fit for 55 and CBAM is. Now we will move on to the significance of CBAM. Why is CBAM significant? What does it do? As we all know, the first thing to be noted here is encourage non-EU countries. What does it encourage non-EU countries to do? If you ask that question, it encourages the non-EU countries to adopt climate stringent policies in order to escape this economic taxation mechanisms and all. It encourages the non-EU countries to adopt climate policies, stringent climate policies, reduce carbon emissions. All these policies will be it will be encouraged through this CBAM. So that is one significance, that is one indirect significance that the CBAM holds. Another thing is levels the playing field. As we have already seen in the pen example, it levels the playing field. It levels the playing field for domestic producers and importers. So yes, that is there. It levels the playing field. CBAM levels the playing field for the domestic producers on par with the importers on par with the domestic players. And yes, another thing, a strong emission reduction effort. Yes, we have already seen it encourages non-European countries, and amongst EU also there are climate stringent policies. And on a global level, on a large scale, we see it will lead to reduction in emissions. Though there will be short-term queries and short-term apprehensions with respect to economic shocks or countries terming it as protectionist and all these things, all these steps, and all countries taking it to the WTO, all these things will be present. But at the end of the day, the thing is, such policies like CBAM and all, it will give us something, it will help us reduce our emissions. It will help us reduce our emissions. So the three basic significance that CBAM holds is that it encourages non-European European Union countries to adopt climate stringent policies, that is there, and it levels the playing field among importers and domestic players, and other significance. And on a larger framework, on a grander framework, it gives us it helps us to reduce emissions. It helps us to reduce emissions. So these are the three major significance that these CBAM holds. So now moving on to the concerns. So what are the concerns with respect to CBAM? The first concern that we are noting here, that we are going to discuss here, is about the equity principle. So equity principle in the sense treating equals equally, right? So treating equals equally. The thing is, equity, some countries, non-EU countries, if you take non-EU countries, these countries are developing countries. At least most of the countries are developing countries or least developed countries. In the past, they did not have anything to do with pollution or emission. All these countries, all these pollution, the pollution that we suffer today, we face today, were all the product of industrial revolution and development in the West, development in the Europe and America. So this stands against the equity principle. All emitters were from EU, all emitters were from Britain, all emitters were from America. So yes, the thing is, it is against the equity principle. It imposes a taxation, it imposes an economic tariff on non-emitters or less emitters in comparison with those who emit. So that is, so people are terming it as opposing the equity principle with respect to climate policies and like climate change concerns. Yes. The first thing is it is against or it opposes the equity principle, and the next thing is about economic shocks. Economic shocks in the sense there are certain countries, certain least developing countries that export to the European Union. All these countries, as they are least developed countries, they have a poor technology resource, they have very low limited chances of technology upgradation and all, and such countries, when they are faced with such mechanisms like that of the CBAM, they face economic shocks. For example, a survey tells us that Mozambique is one of the largest exporters of aluminium to the European Union, and with CBAM in place, the tariff might increase from 25 to 30%. 25 to 30% additional cost means it will surely bring economic shocks with respect to Mozambique and all such countries and all. So yes, that is one thing, it will bring economic shocks to developing countries and as well as least developed countries, but the impact will be more on the least developed countries such as the Mozambique and other African countries that export to the European Union. So yes, moving on to the third point, we have green protectionism. So protectionism, we all know, it is the opposite of globalization, it is the opposite of this mine, like imposing of tariffs and all these things come under protectionism. So when protectionism is covered with a veil of green or is covered with an environmental veil, it is known as green protectionism. So people in the sense, countries and leaders and experts, they are also criticizing the BAM, they are also criticizing the CBAM, they are also criticizing the CBAM as a green protectionism or green protectionist measure that has been adopted by the EU. So yes, it is, they are criticizing it as against the principle of globalization. Yes. Again, we have, it widens the trust deficit. These are all yes, simple points only to be noted. And some people, they accuse that EU's policies of CBAM and ETS, they widen the trust deficit between developing countries and the West, developing countries and the European Union. All these things have been like they have been suggested or put forth as concerns with respect to the CBAM. And some other countries like India also, they are telling that this infringes the WTO rules of most favored nation and national treatment. There are two such things called as the most favored nation and national treatment in WTO rules, and some countries, India and other developing countries, they oppose CBAM, calling it as a principle or mechanism that infringes upon the two fundamental concepts or fundamental principles of WTO. So yes, the MFN and national treatment thing. So yes, these are the various concerns that have been cited with respect to the carbon border adjustment mechanism. And now we move on to impacts on India. So what are the impacts on India with respect to the CBAM? The first thing is, India is one of the largest, not the largest, but one of the largest exporters of things like iron and steel and aluminium, such things. One of the largest exporter to EU is India. This will surely reduce the export competitiveness of India with respect to certain sectors like iron and steel, aluminium and all. And one report says is that 27% of iron and steel and aluminium exports from India goes to the European Union. And with respect to this 27% of exports, it can see an increase in 25 to 30%. We have already seen major countries will see a 25 to 35% increase in tariff with respect to their export. Export tariff will increase. So that is one thing that can affect India with respect to certain sectors. It will reduce the export competitiveness of India in certain sectors such as the iron and steel, aluminum and all. The second impact on India is that of possibility to widen the ambit. So at present the ambit is quite small with respect to CBAM. The ambit is quite small, covering of certain sectors like iron and steel, aluminum and all such polluting sectors. But there is scope, there is a possibility, there is a probability for EU to widen this gap, to widen the ambit of CBAM so that it affects a whole lot of products. It can bring a basket of products, a large basket of products into the CBAM ambit, and it will surely in the future it can happen, and there is a possibility that it affects export competitiveness of India to the European Union on a larger scale, or a larger basket of goods. So these are the two major impacts that India can have with respect to CBAM. And now what are the possible courses of action for India? Just like GS4. So what are the possible course of actions India can have, and what can India do? So yes, we have listed out certain points here. So first thing is decarbonization principle. So talking on a generalist note, what India can do is that we can promote decarbonization. Decarbonization in the sense the deliberate effort to reduce or eliminate carbon emissions and other greenhouse gases emissions. We could put that in place. We can bring special incentives. All these things we can bring. Decarbonization principle, we can put that in place. We can make our climate policies stringent, and all these things we can bring. That is one possibility that what India can do. And second thing is negotiate with EU. Negotiate with EU. That has two dimensions. We can negotiate this thing with EU in two dimensions. One is with respect to tax reduction. We are in constant talks with the European Union with respect to a trade agreement or a trade deal. So we can also include or inculcate principles of CBAM. We can also inculcate the principles of CBAM and negotiate with EU for a lesser tax. Okay, you have the tax, you impose CBAM on us, but at least reduce the percentage of CBAM that is imposed on Indian exports. We can negotiate in that way. Another way of negotiation is with respect to clean tech. We can negotiate with EU for cleaner technology or technology transfer. Like to upgrade our technologies to be climate positive and to be more climate stringent. So yes, we can do negotiation with EU in two types. One is with respect to tax reduction and clean technology. So the third point is that of incentivize green production. So incentivize green production in the sense there are a lot of schemes that incentivizes production. For example, we have this thing called production linked incentive schemes. We can also we can also widen the ambit of production linked incentive schemes to greener production, to less energy intensive production or less carbon intensive production that arrests carbon leakage. So yes, we can use such schemes and such programs or policies to usher in green production. Green production is nothing but production, but with less emissions and less carbon and all. So yes, that is what green production is. We can incentivize green production on a larger scale. So the fourth and the final course of action that India can do is that of take on EU's framework. So this might seem a little bit comical, but yes, this is practical. India is recently the president of the G20, right? So what India can do is that India can ally such similar countries with similar interests, namely the developing countries. It can ally such countries and it can take on the tax framework of EU. It can go to the WTO and all such. It can go to the dispute settlement body of WTO and all these things. And it can also help negotiate. It can also be the group that negotiates with EU with respect to the CBAM. So India being the leader of the global south, it will not only promote India's image, but it will also reduce carbon taxing mechanisms that India and a lot of other developing countries oppose this. So yes, India has also talked about taking things to the WTO and all. And that is one road that is always open. And though the WTO road is open, what India must do is that India must constantly try to negotiate with the UN. It must constantly try to negotiate with the European Union with respect to reducing the tax rate and side by side negotiating for clean technology transfer. So yes, this is what this article comes to a conclusion. This is where this article comes to a conclusion. Thank you.